Well, thank you for joining us for this webinar today. My name is Marcus Aoyong, Senior Marketing Manager for Sansan Global, and I'm today's moderator. Today's topic is effective selling in the new digital economy. With the new norm of remote working and diminished physical interactions, business and selling has naturally moved online over the past several months. Today's webinar is all about helping you be a better digital salesperson. Before we begin, I would like to go over some house rules. There will be a 15-minute Q&A session at the end of the webinar. You may enter your questions in the Q&A panel at any time, and we'll endeavor to answer it during the session. Throughout the webinar, there will also be 2 polling questions. Your inputs are most invaluable to help us bring better experiences to you, and we encourage you to participate actively. If you have any technical questions relating to the webinar's video or audio, please feel free to reach out to our panelists using the chat window at any time. Lastly, a recording of this webinar will be sent to everyone. Today's webinar is brought to you by Sansan. Before we begin, a quick forward. Sansan is a business card-based contact management solution for companies to build their connections through a centralized database, driving more business opportunities and making more deals. Sansan created a contact management solution market and remains the leader, delighting over 6,000 of our clients globally in 31 countries. Most recently, Sansan was awarded the Singapore Business Review Technology Excellence Awards 2020 in the Cloud category. Since our presence in Singapore a few years back, we have helped many of our clients grow, and with today's webinar, we hope to share some insights on how we can sell more effectively in the new digital economy. This year's pandemic is unprecedented, but Sansan's constant innovation through new features, such as our new virtual cards, and increased integration functions with popular productivity platforms have proven invaluable to our clients in this new norm, which you will learn more about throughout the course of this webinar. So without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce our speakers for today, Adrian Tan and Michelle Gan. Regarded as one of today's top global influencers in work tech, Adrian has built a strong and credible voice over the years through his blog and numerous speaking engagements at prominent conferences. In his current capacity as practice leader at People Strong, Adrian drives thought leadership through his voice of leading topics and megatrends in the technology that supports the future of work. Michelle leads Sansan Global's customer success function and strategically partners clients to realize their business goals with Sansan. She is dedicated to the advancement of Sansan's features through relevant technology and works closely with the product development team in addressing clients' key needs. Adrian and Michelle, we are glad to have the both of you with us here today. Adrian and Michelle, perhaps you can...
Thank you for having me.
No problem.
I can't start my video.
Oh, okay. Let me try. How about Michelle? Okay.
I can't start mine as well.
Oh, okay. Okay, can you do it?
Yes.
Okay,
Hi,
got
everyone.
it. This is why we need to actually leverage on tech.
Yes.
Okay, so we are going to cover today's agenda in 3 parts. First, we'll touch briefly on the evolving work trends to today's new digital norm, followed by some insights on how to boost your online profile. And also, we have saved the best for last as we share some key techniques and tools you can use to be a more effective remote salesperson. So evidently, we have quite a bit to cover today, so let's get started. In today's increasingly digitized world, with accelerated changes brought about by the global pandemic, the degrees of one's survivability and success is often closely tied to being adaptable to changes, having a positive mindset, and using the right tools for the job in maximizing productivity and effectiveness in the new remote business environment. For sales and marketing professionals, this is even more important as the physical sources of leads and prospects and the touch points to engage them are rapidly being replaced by online audiences and virtual platforms. So it is amazing that how we are 2/3 through the crazy year of 2020. Michelle, you have had countless conversations with many sales professionals this year. What are some of the key challenges that they face amidst this pandemic?
So 2020 is undoubtedly unprecedented. So salespeople are facing some of the biggest hurdles in their careers. With decision makers putting most purchases on hold, pending deals have been stopped in terms of progress due to shifting priorities. So survival has become the utmost priority. Any uncertainties and doubts that affect the business are immediately scrutinized. Marcus, how about marketers?
I think for marketeers, we are definitely facing mounting challenges. So, as we all know, the familiar events and physical sales platforms that we know are suddenly taken out of the equation. And I'm sure we all miss physical events. We are in August now, and now we are all isolated from one another, and everything is being marketed online, where everyone is trying to vying to actually get their voice be heard online. So, Adrian, I'm sure you have also spoken to some business owners as well. How are things on their end?
Business owners are definitely facing some tough time. This pandemic has strained relationships between the businesses, their suppliers, partners, and in fact, even more. In terms of operations, companies also cannot afford to go about their usual business as usual approach. Many companies that are accustomed to physically conducting their meetings are at a loss of what to do. And this is going to continue indefinitely.
These are indeed trying times for sales-centric professionals, as most businesses suffer stagnating revenues, Adrian. And it looks like these challenges are going to stay with us for a while. So, with the Singapore government actually emphasizing the importance of coming to terms with this new norm in the near future, the narrative of late is that there is no magic bullet, not yet at least, to make things the way they were before. And the sooner we can embrace the discomfort of change and adapt to it, the faster we can actually start to regain business momentum. What do you think, Michelle and Adrian? Adrian
It might
first?
sound strange, but I think the good of this whole pandemic is that there is an even playing field, with most, if not all, being affected. But therein also lies the opportunity to out-innovate your competition during this period to gain a step up for when the economy uptick eventually happens.
I would definitely agree. But again, there's no harvest without initial effort and some capital outlay. So companies might have to make an initial investment to reinvent themselves to actually emerge stronger in terms of their business models as well as the operations.
Evidently, the key takeaway is very clear. Businesses and sales-centric professionals have to evolve to sell more effectively in this new digital economy. So, as the world prepares to move ahead as we navigate the current pandemic towards the future of work, I think we can all agree that the new digital economy is in full swing now, as everyone is scrambling to be noticed online. Adrian and Michelle, what do you think companies and salespeople need to differentiate themselves now more than ever?
Well, I think with video conferencing becoming a norm, whatever market you are in is going to become more crowded. And without the ability to stand out through traditional means, the only way to do so is to be outstanding among your peers online. So a good start is really to position yourself from a micro niche perspective. So instead of putting it out there that you do financial planning for high net worth individual, you may want to go a bit deeper and consider positioning yourself that you do financial planning for third generation business owners instead. So that will really help you to stand out among the crowded ocean.
I would agree. So there is an absolute need to stand out online as well. So think about that. Your target audience is now bombarded with information and digital marketing campaigns more than before. If you're not heard, you're quickly left behind. So while competitors who can innovate will gain momentum, and once you're left behind, it will actually be much tougher to gain back the attraction as before.
Thank you, Adrian and Michelle. I totally agree as well. So now we have come to our first live poll. So I'm going to launch the poll right now. So on screen, you can actually see our first question: which of the following areas is your organization focused now and in the near future? So you may select more than one option. So there are various answers to the questions here. So I'll just give a minute for everyone to put in their inputs. Very interesting results that we are seeing here. It's almost like monitoring the live stock market. Okay. Okay, it's 10 more seconds. Okay, so you can see the results for yourselves here. Pretty even mix, I would say. We have the greatest number of our audience saying that they are actually thinking of greater penetration in existing markets. So that's not likely to change, followed by taking stock of the current situation and also improving their business processes, which is totally valid. That's the safest, I would say, one of the safer choices. So we'll be sharing these results to you in the post-webinar slides as well. All right, let's move on. Okay. So indeed, with the crowded online space, how can salespeople stand out? Beyond just having a nice LinkedIn profile, how can one, establish a project, a stronger digital image online, have a more visible online profile in relevant platforms where your target market would likely be looking? Adrian, you're widely considered as one of the most established tech influencers in the region. Are there any tips that you can share with us?
Well, having a LinkedIn profile would surely be the bare minimum as the lowest hanging fruit since there's little friction in creating an account. But to stand out, you need to ensure that your profile is not just completed, but also it has sufficient supporting evidence of what you do. That comes in the form of recommendation from others, having sufficient connections to spread your word, and showcasing your past achievements in the form of images or presentations. Now, to get a validation of how well you're doing, you can actually Google for LinkedIn Social Selling Index tool to learn about your score, which is measured of 100. Social Selling Index score, or SSI in short, measures how effective you are at establishing your professional brand, finding the right people, engaging with insights, and building relationships. That means to have a complete profile, proactively searching for the right people to connect with you on LinkedIn, and engage with relevant insights and share valuable content on LinkedIn. But beyond LinkedIn, you want to make sure you're visible on other aspects of the web as well.
I think that's really interesting, Adrian. I think like a lot of the attendees as myself, we would like to know how you actually started out and some of the challenges salesperson actually might face when they build their online profile.
So in my case, I actually have my own blog, and I started this in 2005. But back then, it was very random stuff, writing about things people would not want to read on, like what I have for lunch. But progressively, it became more focused, and I started to write about HR technology perhaps about 5 years ago. Having my own website allows me to get onto Google search engine. So when people search for HR tech, they may see me as one of the search results. That is in fact how I also got into my current company, People Strong, because I was at an event in India, and my current marketing VP recognized me from my blog, invited me to the booth, from the booth to the office, and the rest is history. So for people who may want to kickstart on that, I would highly suggest starting your own page, be it on WordPress.com or get your own domain. And if you're really unsure about what to write about, you can always consider critiquing the way other people may be marketing or selling their stuff. Your unique point of view may elevate your status as a thought leader or subject matter expert.
And in your well-established journey towards being a thought leader as well as an influencer, what are some of the platforms that you can advise we produce content for?
So there's many of them. Of course, writing would be something that is the lowest hanging fruit, but as it becomes saturated, you need to find other means and ways to stand out from the crowd. That would include participating as guest in webinar, like what I'm doing today, writing guest articles on media that has strict editorial guidelines like Channel News Asia, Forbes, or deliver your content in other formats such as podcasts or videos. Personally, I resurrected my podcast recently to profile people in businesses that are enabling the future of work. And if you look at how some property agents are also putting a lot of video production value into the property they wish to sell, this is really something that put them ahead of the competition that are still relying on images taken with widescreen lenses. Then, of course, you have to keep at it and ensure that the content are not one-off, it's on a regular basis. And that is how you can maximize your presence. Just like the mail that never happened because you didn't put it up online, staying hidden and not really showcasing what you're doing could mean the same thing as well.
Thank you for sharing, Adrian. Those are some very helpful tips to get us started in building a more prominent profile online. Speaking of Instagram meals, we now move on to the real meat of the webinar. So in the second half of the webinar, we will go through some digital selling techniques and digital tools that salespeople can adopt to sell more effectively in the new norm. It is also important to note that the average business professional can do this. There's no need for special training or huge investments in time or finances. Generally, there are two main ways of increasing the pipeline. One is to look at generating new sales from external sources, and secondly, to create them internally within your own organization from your existing contacts. I think we can all agree that often we are all too focused on finding new leads from attending events that we overlook the huge number of contacts that already exist in the company from past engagements and the huge potential waiting to be maximized. What do you think, Michelle?
Indeed, Marcus. So for example, out of 100 business cards that we have received from events, we naturally will only select the top handful of contacts that we qualify them as a sales opportunity. And out of this handful, perhaps a quarter could be considered as actual sales conversions, and the remaining 3/4 becomes recycled. If you were to take a very simple mathematics, if you were to take 3/4 of contacts that you have received in this event and multiply it by the total number of events you have attended, this could be a huge number of high quality potential sales opportunity that you may have overlooked. The business card is actually an entry ticket to begin a relationship between two companies. It should be well managed right from the start. We owned it. So remember, the timing might not be right back then, but it could be now, or in the near future as well. So start nurturing this as a singlets now and set to sell from now to then. So tools like Sansan helps companies to building centralized contact management platform system for organizations that enable staff to visualize all business contacts and connections within the organization. So with that, you can discover mutual connections internally and gain referrals to create new business opportunities for yourself as well as your team. And by sharing contacts internally, you can increase productivity, speed up your work delivery, and strengthen the team collaboration to maximize the potential of connections and avoid lead wastages as well. So remember, the customer's journey does not only commence from the day your prospect become your active clients. It actually begins right from the start, where a representative from your company initiates the first touch point. Thus, it is important to remember where this touch point first began, and it can be just as simple as adding a tag or label to this contact. So for example, you met this prospect at the exhibition in 2019 or 2018. So just imagine if someone whom you have not spoken for a long while was able to recall where the both of you have last met. How would you feel as an individual?
Thank you, Michelle, for taking us through the possibilities of how a centralized contact management solution can offer very effective pipeline generation at times like these when the flow of external leads might be slowing. Okay, now we actually come to poll number 2. How receptive is your management towards implementing organization-wide solutions which hold promise of sales productivity, but may require some time and shift in thinking to realize its full potential? So as the first one, I'll give one minute to input your answers. Okay, some pretty interesting results here. Majority of the audience actually think that it's very likely that their organization would be likely to implement something that would inject some sales productivity potential, followed by moderate, and then very likely and fairly unlikely. So heartening to know that nobody has voted highly unlikely. So thank you for participating, everyone. Okay, let's move on. All right, over the past few months, physical meetings have dwindled significantly and have been gradually replaced by online virtual meetings instead. We are all directly forced to adapt to these technological changes as we transit from office to working from home. Some people adapt faster, while others don't do so well with these technological changes. However, to continue to sustain organizational growth, I think we have to make the best possible use of this situation. Michelle, how do you think that we can do that?
I think it's salespeople who have to evaluate how to conduct sales meetings with prospects as well as their potential clients more effectively. And to do that, we should start thinking from the perspective of your customers. So for example, what kind of virtual tools will they use to conduct meetings? How will they like to be contacted? As well as how can you make online sales meeting a more natural and easier way of communication for them? Adrian, you are well versed in work tech, and I'm sure you have a go-to tool list to maximize your productivity. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Definitely. Given that I'm involved in doing prospecting work as well, I will share with you what I'm using personally. Hopefully the audience get to benefit from some of them. So quite a number of tools. The first one is something called Appointment. I use this to create a public page that shows my available calendar slots. So instead of wasting time to and fro to find common date, one just need to pick that one that suits them, and the calendar invite goes out to everyone. The app actually integrates with Gmail and O365, so you don't have to manually block out the period you're not available. You can also try out some other alternative like Calendly or even EV.ai for similar functions. The other one that I find quite useful is called Loom. It actually allows me to quickly and easily capture a video capture of my screen because video is always easier to communicate across rather than written words. So when I want to take a video capture of how my app works to a certain extent, I could just do so and send it across to my recipient. Showing where to make a tweak to PowerPoint or things like that is really easier than writing it out. And it allowed me to house it on my personal page for easy sharing. The other thing that I'm using is called Genie. Genie is something that is created by my company, People Strong. It's a chatbot that has extended into sales enablement. Especially for people with limited access to documents, I can ask Genie to retrieve the latest sales pitch, case studies, pricing, and even incentive policy in case I forget what's the incentive scheme that we have. I'm also using Zapier. Now, manual repetitive copy and paste has really no space in home office. Zapier helps you take care of that by acting as a conduit or the glue between different cloud-based software. So currently, I use Zapier to push user emails that have signed up for a newsletter straight to from a contact form straight to our email distribution platform like MailChimp or BirdSend. And as long as you're using some form of cloud-based software, Zapier will be a godsend. Beyond Zapier, there's another thing called Phantom Buster. It's a recent discovery. I would really put it as a RPA for individuals. I actually have a script on this that runs through my LinkedIn every day and like the most recent posts of people that I've designated. So instead of liking it manually, I get the system to do it automatically for me. You can also use it to automate following people on social media or script email addresses of LinkedIn profile as well. The next thing will be Lead Connect. Although Phantom Buster can automate LinkedIn connecting, I would prefer to use Lead Connect as a dedicated app to do so. Because lead gen is a big part of my job, I leverage a lot on LinkedIn to connect with new prospects and share with existing connections what's new. Lead Connect allows me to automatically send 100 personalized connections invite per day and up to 300 personalized messages to my existing network daily. The last second tool that I'll be using would be something called Crisp. Video calling is the toughest to replicate well in a home environment. I'm personally right now at my balcony and it's really susceptible to a lot of background noises. So Crisp is actually a software you can install on your computer and it automatically mute background noises in real time. I'm not exactly sure what's the magic behind it, but it works really well. And lastly would be follow-up then. With all prospecting messages, you often have to do a lot of follow-up and sometimes you may miss it out. So instead of doing it manually, I actually depend on followupthen.com to automatically send out chasers and I can automate based on when I want it to be sent out. So if I want something to be referred to again in 3 months later, I could just use 3 months at followupthen.com. And it's not app dependent. If you know how to use email, you know how to use followupthen.com.
Thanks for taking us through that very long list of useful tools, Adrian. I'm actually using some of them in my daily work as well, and I also can attest to how well they actually work. But then again, we must also not forget about a humble yet powerful email client. What do you think, Michelle?
Yes, Marcus. I guess most of us will easily spend about 30 to 50% of our time with emails. So being effective with emails is also very important. we should explore ways to make the email client work better for us. And what can it integrate, synchronize to, and what kind of value can this kind of integration generate? So for example, through Sansan's integration with Microsoft 365, the users are able to create meeting invitations easily by accessing their contact folder in Outlook. So they can also view any appointments that were made or are scheduled with the specific contact. So this all makes it easy to keep track of people who you wish to remain contact with.
How about like certain missed opportunities due to typos, when people actually manually type in addresses by themselves? How can this help?
I think so, because the accuracy of Sansan when we digitize the business card is actually at 99% accuracy. So all this, there will be no typo errors in terms of the first name, last name, as well as the addresses, email address as well. So you can actually rest assured that the contact information are accurate as it is from the digital card. So from there, you can actually send email very comfortably without any concern of sending it to the wrong recipient, or probably like what you have highlighted, the wrong address name.
Thank you, Michelle and Adrian, for sharing these very useful tools that salespeople can use to maximize their productivity in selling more effectively. I'm sure our audience will be doing plenty of Googling after this webinar. So we can all agree that before any sales engagement, it's always important to do sufficient research on your prospect. Now, more than ever, there's plenty of relevant information to be found online. What do you think, Michelle?
So to maximize the effectiveness of your sales meeting, be well prepared. I think this is something all of us should do. So research industry-specific pain points and key challenges that's relevant to your prospect, and prepare plans on how to address them. So the idea is to collect as much information as possible to make your prospect think, if this stranger who I just met understands me and knows what I'm facing, imagine what they can do if we were to work together. So with sufficient research and preparation, you are closer to making them feel that they can relate to you more and want to continue the conversation, open up and provide more info regarding their company's challenges. At the end of the day, the more info you have, the higher chance of continuing the sales conversation through future follow-ups, as well as to end an eventual deal.
I totally agree. Often sales professionals forget about the human aspect and rush into a laundry list of what their product or solution can do, without really addressing how it is going to make their potential clients' life easier, resolve their challenges, or bring what kind of value to their company. Now, if you look at many financial sales professionals on LinkedIn, they will often talk about their MDRT and other accolades. It stokes their ego, but does nothing for new prospect, because somebody else's MDRT award is not going to help them gain financial freedom in any way. Michelle, how else do you think salesperson can make a closer connection with their prospects?
I think generally the mood now in remote situations is definitely not as upbeat as before. So as you mentioned, Adrian, we are humans and nothing beats actual in-person interaction. So the key to me is to break the ice is actually familiarity. So other than researching on the prospect's profile and business updates, we should also look for common ground to facilitate a better communications. So, and this common ground can be as simple as asking for an internal referral from your own teammates. So as people get distance physically, the craving for familiarity with past connections from fonder times gets stronger. We should leverage on existing connections within the organizations with your prospects. And this should help your prospect open up and be more receptive towards you. So for your active customers, it is important to understand how close-knitted is the existing relationship, what's the account coverage and activity level. And not just the salesperson, everyone within the firm who have any form of contact or engagement with the customers is actually an asset of insights. And for new customers, the organization tree can actually help you to uncover what is actually the gap in potential missing connections to penetrate the new account as well.
Thank you, Michelle and Adrian. You both make very valid points. Think of it this way. If I'm devoting more of my Zoom time to a salesperson, which by the way, some studies have found Zoom is actually more stressful than face-to-face meetings. The last thing I want to hear is how good their product is without understanding my current situation and how they can help me solve my challenges. Okay, so you found yourself some good prospects, done all your homework on them, just short of outright stalking them. and managed to secure some pretty promising online sales appointments. Now it's time to wow them with stellar first impressions. Most people actually form an initial impression of you the first time they see you or meet you over Zoom in a mere 7 seconds. Evidently, those are some very important fleeting moments. Adrian and Michelle, what are some of your thoughts on this?
The first few seconds would definitely be very superficial, and those are things you need to get taken care of. So firstly, dress the part. It's easy to roll out of bed and go right to work, especially if you're not turning your camera on. But even during these times, we can still be conscious of our personal brand and professionalism we are showing. So when it comes to any video calls, ensure that you are keeping up your appearance. And even if the bare minimum that you want to do is to utilize the hashtag Zoom wallet, that means business on top and comfy casual on bottom. Light up your face when possible. Open up your shades, let the natural light in, just not behind you. It's best if your largest light source is either in front of you or no more than 45 degrees away from directly in front of you. And also be aware that your screen can be a large source of light. You may wish to adjust your screen brightness accordingly. A bright screen can wash out your face. The third one will be turning on the facelift filter. Now, many spas and salons might still be closed, but we don't need to worry because Zoom has a beauty filter and it's called Touch Up My Appearance. Male or female, we all can benefit from an even complexion and a few less wrinkles. Once you turn on the feature, it should remain on even for your next video call. I promise you'll instantly look younger. Lastly, use a Zoom background, especially if you need to hide the clutter on your counter. You can use a digital background to disguise your location. A quick online search can help you find free Zoom backgrounds ranging from sleek designer living room to tropical paradise. Or you can even place yourself inside your favorite TV show. You just have to download the image and load it into your Zoom profile before your meeting.
I think it's really a good point. I've just turned on my facelift filter. Do I look younger to many of you now? So I guess the key is to create a strong yet natural first impression. And as many of you might have known by now, Zoom virtual backgrounds are great and save you a crowded IKEA trip just to decorate your room background. So do you know you can also exchange business cards virtually, like how you would do it in person? So on my background, you actually see a QR code, and I hope probably the attendees from Singapore would find this very familiar. We scan everywhere we go right now, the SG Safe Entry. So would you like to actually take out your camera and try digitizing my business card? You will actually be able to download my business card as well as send your business card back to me as well. So I created my virtual card using Sansan, which helps me to facilitate a very natural introduction and make stronger impressions to do more business anywhere. So online business meetings don't have to be very impersonal. So you can exchange virtual cards and warm up your sales conversations very naturally. As you can see, this feature is very handy if you organize your own webinars and allow your audience to get connected to you in masses. Adrian, you should create your own virtual card as well and get connected to even more people and co-host more webinars.
Oh yes, this is perfect. I'll definitely do so and use my virtual card for future webinars.
Thanks, Adrian and Michelle. It is indeed refreshing to see a QR code being used for something else rather than safe entry check-ins, which everybody is doing pretty often. All right. So consistently holding somebody's attention for more than 30 minutes with positive vibes or longer requires practice, but we can all use some starting tips. Adrian, you have had extensive experience with numerous speaking engagements and your fair share of online webinars and events. Can you share some helpful guidelines with us?
Oh, for sure. So quite a number of them. First thing is to get with the tech. The first and most basic way to hold onto your audience is to master the technology you're using. The biggest single technology glitch is a lagging internet connection. And awkwardness comes with a frozen screen as a speaker asks, can you hear me? Where did I cut off? If the tech breaks down, your relationships will too. Make sure the connections are stable, close out all applications and tabs, and move your Wi-Fi router, if possible, closer to your workspace. This is important, especially when you're using a process-intensive video call application. Number two, welcome everyone. At the beginning of each meeting or event, connect with everyone in the virtual room by welcoming them. If your audience is large, compliment them as a group. Perhaps they are talented financial executives, say that. Make them feel you have researched them, know them, admire them. What feels like gushing to you is appreciation to them. or welcome them by expressing empathy, such as asking them how they're currently dealing with the current situation and try to relate to that. Of course, have a message. A message instills purpose, and without it, people will naturally lose interest. How do you know when someone has a message? You hear a big idea, something to believe in, something compelling that holds your attention. When there's no message, the speaker ramble on and use a lot of filler words. I turned into a Zoom webinar a few days ago, and here's what I hear. There's a really good program. I think such halting language really turns off audiences in less than 60 seconds. The next, of course, is not to read off the slide. If you want to keep your audience awake, avoid the common practice of putting a bunch of slides up and reading from them. Let the words come from you, not the slides. Be the visual yourself. This will energize the room far more than reading from slides. After all, if you're in a small box on the screen and the slides take over the screen, no one will hear you. They'll look at the slide and tune you out. Becoming the visual will require an additional step in your preparation process. You have to internalize what you're going to say rather than turning to slides to prompt you. But if you don't internalize your ideas, how can you expect your audience to? Next, listen to the room. It may seem counterintuitive to think of listening to a remote, often muted audience, but it's possible and necessary if you want to keep your audience from dozing off. Pause at key points to ask questions or inquire if the audience has any immediate reactions. That would help show you care about their needs. Active listening puts everyone in your audience on alert that you may be directing the next questions their way, thereby countering any desire to zone out. Next, be physically present. Begin with eye contact. It's the most powerful physical cue we have. Look your audience in the eye by looking into the camera and make your eyes express enthusiasm. Have a warm expression on your face and sit up, stand still. Gestures too are important, so make sure you have your arms, hands showing on screen and use gesture to emphasize your points. Keep your arm open, not folded. Make sure you keep your camera on at all time. The camera will capture your expression, body language, including head nods, facial changes that show your engagement. The last point will be rev up your voice. So you have to use your voice to keep your audience from lapsing into semi-sleep. The voice is a powerful instrument for conveying feelings, and what your virtual audience needs is more of your emotion. So use your voice to keep them involved. To begin with, avoid a monotone voice. Many speakers sound monotonous as though they are speaking to themselves. To counter this, speak with more passion, expression, and conviction than you normally would. Modulate your voice too to indicate what's important and what's less important. This will help your audience be less fatigued than if you were to deliver everything with equal emphasis.
Wow, those are some very useful tips, Adrian. Thanks for sharing those. It's always important to be conscious of your body language, but at the same time, we must also remind ourselves to be relaxed. It's easier said than done, but as you go on, practice makes perfect. Now more than ever, teams cannot afford to continue operating in silo. As we work remotely, there needs to be more fostered collaboration to increase productivity, and the tools need to facilitate that. Let us go into a little bit more detail on some ways to improve sales effectiveness. So when inbound leads start to slow, especially during this period, it's time to nurture existing prospects. Salespeople working with your inside sales and marketing team is more important now than ever. Brainstorm and co-develop outbound ideas campaigns and provide them with industry-specific pain points and challenges, as mentioned earlier by Michelle and Adrian, and leverage on the sales team's experience and expertise with similar customers facing the same challenges and how you and your product/solution helped or are helping them address and overcome these challenges. Launch email nurture campaigns centered around these, and you might be surprised at how many actually want to talk to you. Remember, they may not be ready to buy then, but the time may be right now.
I totally agree, Marcus. In fact, a lot of our customers have very specific challenges unique to their industry. And an effective outbound campaign addressing this can be really what a drawing pipeline needs. So for added effectiveness, inside sales can play a bigger role in these outbound campaigns by empowering them with the necessary training. And one of these two is a well-designed inside sales playbook. So the saying goes, for a salesperson to perform, you need to equip them with the right tools to help them to do their job. Similarly, when considering how you can further improve your sales team to help them challenge the status quo, you need to give them a set of proper rules and expectations to guide them. on how they can do their job as well as perform better. Especially for the inside sales, they are the key player of passing down what they deem as a quality lead to the sales team. However, the definition of a quality lead may differ to individuals. Hence, in order for a sales team to perform better, what they sell must be aligned with what the inside sales team has originally promised the customers. And this consistency in selling would be made possible by building an inside sales handbook to help your teams align and create better sales performances to help you sell more. So some of the benefits of having an inside sales guidebook will actually allow very consistent communication and alignment across entire sales team. It helps the new sales, inside sales recruits to prepare and to get to speed sooner. And of course, align the inside sales teams as well as the marketing teams' work processes. Most importantly, it enables anyone within the organization to understand inside sales procedure better and provide inputs to constantly improve. So once you have created your inside sales guidebook, you will be able to ensure that your sales team can perform even better because they are only receiving the highest potential quality leads from the inside sales team, meaning less time wasted and more sales closed. So higher quality sales leads and conversion equates to more opportunities and better closed results. And therefore, it will help to improve the conversion rates.
Very well said, Michelle. Like any team sport, all members must step up their game to achieve collaborative success, especially more in these trying times. Okay, we are almost at the end of the main section of today's webinar. Before we move on to the Q&A session, let us recap some of the key topics covered today. We first reviewed the key challenges faced by sales-centric professionals and the shift in mentalities needed to overcome them. With everything being moved online, one of the key things we learned was how to establish a stronger digital profile, so as to establish long-term trust with your prospects. We then moved on to find out how we can maximize our pipeline, existing leads and connections within our companies, and from there, gathered lots of insights on how to be the most effective version of ourselves when selling remotely. Of course, it's never just about individual performance, as was just covered, and to achieve true consistent success, team collaboration is key to keep the pipe gen engine chugging along nicely. Before I move on to the Q&A session, I'll leave everyone with this quote by Patricia Fripp: "To build a long-term successful enterprise, when you don't close a sale, open a relationship," which I believe is especially relevant in these times now. So now we move on to the Q&A session. We have received some very interesting questions from the audience. So one of the audience actually asked, what's the best recommendation for dual screen setup if my laptop only has video camera? I notice my face is turned away from the audience since I'm looking at the screen on the monitor. So maybe Adrian can provide some inputs on that.
Sure, there's a couple of ways to take care of this. One, of course, is to get a teleprompter set up if you need to read off something, but that is going to be a costly affair. So the other way is to adjust the position of your webcam, which is impossible. However, there is an application on the App Store. You can check it out. It's called NDI Camera. NDI Camera essentially turns your smartphone into your webcam. So if your smartphone is your webcam, and even if it has to be physically tethered to your laptop, you can physically and easily move it around to all different angles. So that is how you can make use of a different angle to better position where your eye level is.
Okay, we have another question from one of the audience. I think this person finds the part about establishing digital profile very insightful. So the question is, like for salespeople who are not very proficient at writing content, because salespeople usually just talk, right? How can they, produce content? Do they engage external vendor to do it for them, or leverage on internal sources? What are the thoughts on that, Adrian?
I think it is still better to create your own content because you want to put in your own voice. Many years back when I was trying to put up content on my own site, I actually engaged someone on Fiverr to put content together. This writer is based in Philippines. I paid very little money for the content, for 5 pieces of content, which I decided to throw everything away. because the quality is not there and the voice is not there. Now, as you mentioned earlier on, salespeople only know how to talk. How about doing a podcast instead? And if that is something too hard for you, well, there are tools out there that could actually use machine to auto-transcribe whatever you're saying. We have already seen it in our smartphone where the keyboard has this function built in. If you want something else that is more purpose-built, check out this app called otter.ai, O-T-T-E-R.ai. So it can actually automatically and uses machine to transcribe whatever you're saying into text. So you just have to go in and do minor editing, fine-tuning, and your content will be ready.
Thank you, Adrian. Very useful answers there. I'm sure everyone appreciates that. And one more question from the audience. How do we increase the LinkedIn contacts and connections to increase our own pipeline? How do people actually do that?
So since using Lead Connect, I have actually realized I've added close to 9,000 new connections. So right now I'm close to 30,000 new connections. And you have to depend on two things. One, of course, a platform that helps you to automate sending out of invites. You can do it manually, but that's going to be very, very time consuming. So you again want to look at apps like Phantom Buster, Lead Connect, or anything else on a similar platform. The other thing is you need to have a right pitch. You do not just want to send a generic pitch. Hey, I want to connect with you. I want to sell you something. People will just say no. So you have to think about what is something you want to share across. What is the value you want to provide across that invites them to naturally click accept. So it could be in the form of a white paper, a handbook, a playbook, the one that you may have shared earlier on, something that they could really read through, something they could be educated on, or in fact, it could be something that they could perhaps interact with. So for example, I've seen this payroll company, they actually created a payroll calculator or something because there was changes to CPF rates over that period of time. So they use it to broadcast and everyone was like, oh, I really need this because I need to make sure that my costing for next year is correct. So everyone just came straight in to download the app. And of course, to do so, they need to accept his invitation. So think about what exactly is the gift that you want to provide across to your prospect.
Thanks, Adrian. So this one is probably more for Michelle. So as we all know, LinkedIn is external of the organization. So how about internal, pipeline? How do we actually generate that? I know we covered that briefly earlier. Perhaps Michelle can elaborate a bit more on how we can do so, like using certain solutions.
Sure. So I think the first check-in would be, is there any common depository tool within the organization that allows the sales team or any employees within the organization to co-share the connections that they have? So imagine if you have a team of 10 and each of you actually have like about 100 to 200 contacts. Can you imagine if you were to multiply by 10, you could have 2,000 contacts and connections that you can actually work with. So based on these connections that you have captured, so for example, I'm representing Sansan, so definitely I'll be using Sansan as an example. So whenever I want to prospect a company, the first thing I would definitely go to is Sansan, and try to look for common connections, and always pray hard that my bosses have it. Right? So if there's common connections, I will be able to leverage on their expertise, their existing relationship. And from there, I get a referral to warm up to connect to this prospect. So at the end of the day, a cold prospecting versus a warm prospecting, definitely a warm prospecting coming out from an existing contact would definitely be better.
Thanks, Michelle. So I have one more question, probably either Adrian or Michelle can actually answer this. How do we create interactive content for future sales pipeline? Are there tools that are free rather than paid ones? So I think, Adrian, you covered this a bit earlier, a bit in your answers, but maybe you can elaborate on interactive content where maybe the audience can actually give feedback and not just like a blog post or like a video.
Well, it depends on what interactive content you're referring to. So the ones that I've seen in most cases, because I'm in the B2B business, you don't really have to think too hard. Even a simple Excel sheets would be sufficient. For example, you need to perhaps, like in the course of my work, I need to convince HR people who needs to convince their CFO what is the ROI of our system. So to get them to start from scratch, from a blank piece of paper, is very hard. So instead, we put together a ROI calculator, and it's nothing. There's no front end. It's not on HTML. It's purely on an Excel sheet. So we just help them to populate the figures, send across. That's it. So anything as simple as that, especially if you're in the B2B business. In fact, even if you're in the B2C, and you need to put something along that line, Excel sheet is always good to begin with, because Excel sheet is just like email. You don't have to teach people how to use it. Instead of getting them to, go and download an app, you need to do onboarding. These are just going to add more friction for yourself.
Thank you, Adrian. So this one is probably more for Michelle. Like with the sources of external leads drying up, or at least slowing down during this time, I think a lot of companies are adopting a strategy where they are focusing on, delighting their current customers and keeping them, because when the economic uptick eventually happens, there will be the opportunity to upsell. So how can one actually do that?
I think one very important thing is to constantly keep in touch and not only appear during probably like the renewal time. Ensure that you have all the different important stakeholders, right from the decision maker to the end users, connected. So you need to be there when they need you. You need to be there even when they don't need you. So basically, having this customer audit in terms of the relationship index is very important personally. And that is generally how we want to ensure that existing customers are being well connected in various times. And at the end of the day, it's also very important that we actually remember where we have met the client, even though this client is already an active client of yours, but everyone wants to feel special, right? So back to the previous question that I think the attendees have actually asked, how we can actually create interactive content. On top of the using Excel, you can also profile and segment the customers. So for example, if this customer is actually someone that belongs to more of the end user, you want to send a content that's more relevant to an end user instead of a very high profile content. And like what Adrian have shared, when you're speaking to the ladies from payroll system, and you know that the CFO definitely, hand out questions in regards to ROI. So you address the pain and the challenges that the end goals will actually require. So go customize and targeted approach.
Thanks, Michelle.
So
we have one more question. We have never used digital platforms to sell before. How do we start to transit to selling digital and increasing the pipeline? So I believe this is like from traditional selling channels to a digital platform. How can they actually start to lay down the groundwork, and basically get started?
I think the first step is really to just start doing it. Many people have been caught off guarded by this pandemic, and many people in the traditional businesses have never even thought about doing this. Like, for example, look at the tuition teacher, you look at so many different functions, the gym instructor, all of them have to transit to digital platform, and they also do not know how to go about doing so. But I hope you can draw some reference from how we conduct this webinar, monitor and see how your competition are doing, how other people in other functions are doing, and then just try doing it on your own. You don't have to go live from day one. You can get someone to be your audience and just do a role play and see how the experience is like. Make sure the lighting is good, background is okay, sound is awesome, and then you start to take it one meeting at a time. And once you get the fundamental correct, then that is where you can look into raising up your game. So you may want to pair it with a campaign, you may want to get your guests in, you may want to do some interaction. So anything at all can be possible. I even know someone who is a meditation teacher and she's conducting meditation through Zoom. So it is entirely possible. It sounds weird, but it is possible. She doesn't have the best hardware. She doesn't have the best webcam, but it can be done.
Thanks, Adrian. And I believe there are a lot of tools such as HubSpot. They're actually free versions that actually give you a very good starting ground to get sales automation started. Because at the very start, you're not expecting a huge pipeline. So you can actually use HubSpot, the free version, to get things started. And there are plenty of online webinars and articles, courses, free courses, basically, to give you a foundation, crash course into start to sell digitally online. So I think one more question that we have here is, if the particular industry is from the intangible services, how do we sell online? So basically, this question is asking, how do we sell in the industry where there are intangible services? I think intangible is pretty general, but I think it's not very clearly defined, basically. So probably something like software, probably. Like there is no product, you're selling a service. Maybe consulting services, things like that.
Okay, yeah. Like construction. Okay.
Construction, there's no product. Basically, you're offering your service or your expertise. Because these things are you're pretty much relying on testimonials from past, your clients. There is no, I would say, okay, it's hard to actually give a proof of your work online, basically, like a demo of your work.
If I were to draw from my personal experience, what I'm selling or what we are trying to market at People Strong is also a service. We don't have a product per se. We are a software and we run it as a software as a service. So basically you pay a subscription, you get to use the software. So there's no physical product. You can interact with it as an app on your phone, but that's about it. And how we basically put this together is, of course, to lead the individual through the experience by going through demo, by going through hands-on. Now, in the construction industry, which I'm not very familiar with, I would assume hands-on demo, all this would be tough, but it is something that perhaps you can try to recreate. For example, if you're trying to sell, I don't know, let's say industrial glue, you can perhaps have video captures beforehand, produce content on comparison between these two kind of material, and to show a time-lapse video of how it works. And of course, the science behind it, the history behind it. So it would really be from a presentation perspective, but of course, providing as much evidence as possible, whether it is real-time evidence or pre-developed evidence, to back what you are claiming in the presentation.
Thanks, Adrian. And I think in this case, I think having a set of awards and accolades is important. I know earlier we touched upon, where people actually start to talk about their achievements and things like that. But I think in terms of like services where it's pretty straightforward, like construction, right? It's pretty straightforward, and people look at your credentials, like what kind of recognition you have actually gotten. So probably start to look at associations. Joining association events and associations related to your industries, and start making connections, like making growing your network from there. So that's a pretty good start. All right, I believe we have come almost to the end of the webinar. So I will be closing the webinar pretty soon. So basically, thank you so much, everyone, for joining today's webinar. Once again, thank you, Adrian and Michelle. And last but not least, a very huge thank you to our fellow attendees. We hope you have enjoyed today's session and had plenty of useful takeaways. So as promised, we will send you the recording and also a deck of the slides, but only after you actually submit your webinar survey, which will be sent to you later today. So without further ado, I wish you a great rest of the week. And once again, thank you from Sansan. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Everyone, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.